Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Cadet Joel Thomas from the Virginia Military Institute. I'm joined today by Cadets Rush Ehrman, Zachary Schaefer, and Nicholas Rubel. Today, we will first present our task, go over the key terminology associated with our presentation, present our assumptions going into our proposed courses of action, the ethical and legal considerations we have taken into account going into our courses of action, and then present our 3 courses of action and then conclude. Our task, as we understand it, is to present a range of cyber options in response to a range of aggressive actions by North Korea, whether they be a purely cyber attack, purely conventional attack, or a hybrid of the two. In effect, we will consider the options that are possible in response to these, analyze them ethically, legally, strategically, and tactically, and present a set of proposals that are actionable for each scenario. In support of our task, we will first be defining some key terms. Cyber war is an act of warfare using computer systems attacking another nation, especially their key infrastructure. The key or critical infrastructure is any cyber infrastructure necessary to the functioning of a nation, such as economic systems like the New York Stock Exchange, military or national security systems, public health systems, or general infrastructure like power grids in major cities. We'll also be using the term offensive cyber operation, or OCO, which is a cyber action aimed at an enemy with the intent of wounding them tactically or strategically in some way. One of these is reconnaissance, which consists in the cyber realm of intercepting, decrypting, and reading the enemy information sent through their cyber networks in order to gain a tactical or strategic advantage. There's also deception, which is inserting false information into enemy systems, computer and communications, in order to deceive the enemy and gain an advantage. There is manipulation, which is the use of our cyber capabilities to delay or stop the sending of messages across enemy cyber communication systems for the purposes of our commanders. And then there's denial. Denial consists of 3 elements: degradation, disruption, and destruction. Degradation is altering the capabilities of enemy cyber infrastructure so that their use of it is significantly impaired, but not completely disabled. This would mean slowing them down to such a rate that they could not function normally, but such that they could still function on some level. Disruption is impairing their use of their information and cyber technologies in such a way that they completely cannot use them for a limited amount of time, say a day or so. And then destruction is the complete and permanent deprivation of enemies of pieces of cyber infrastructure so that they cannot use them, period, without completely replacing them. With that, I'll then turn this over to Cadet Ehrman, who will present our assumptions going into our scenarios.
Okay, so some of the assumptions we've made. Our first is that just war theory is applicable in cyber war without any major changes. We say this because a cyber attack is an affront to a nation's sovereignty, just like a conventional attack would be. Therefore, we believe that just war theory covers it completely. Our next assumption is that these 3 scenarios would be considered an act of war on the part of North Korea. The next assumption is that the acts are easily and directly traceable to North Korea, and we say this because any cyber attackers we would not be able to directly trace to North Korea, say it came through a proxy, say through China or any nation nearby. If we couldn't, without a doubt, say that it came from North Korea, we would not recommend these specific courses of action. Our next assumption is that use ad bellum justifications are met, which would enable us to make a direct response to the actions by North Korea. And our last assumption is that the actions we recommend are feasible, acceptable, and supportable. With that, pass it off to Cadet Thomas to talk about ethical considerations.
Thank you. As Cadet Ehrman said, we adopted the just war theory approach for our presentation. There is a competing school of thought that says because cyber war does not include actual physical damage in most cases, it deserves another ethical paradigm. However, we adopt the definition of aggression that has been adopted by several just war theorists that defines aggression as an act that significantly impacts sovereignty of another nation that would trigger acts of war justifiable under just war theory. We believe this we believe that a significant infringement of sovereignty would be something like North Korea attacking a major defense computer system, or say the New York Stock Exchange. It would have a major impact. And therefore would represent a breach of sovereignty. Under just war theory, there are two prongs: the jus ad bellum, the actions that, or the conditions that must be fulfilled before war can be carried out, as well as jus in bello, conditions that must be fulfilled during war. We believe that our courses of action satisfy jus ad bellum criteria because, one, they have just cause, just intent, and a just goal. That is, they have a just cause in North Korean aggression against us. Their intent is to stop North Korean aggression against us, and our goal, our desired end state, is a pre-bellum peace. They are proportionate in that us undertaking these courses of action against North Korea would not provide a significant escalation of the conflict and beyond what has been warranted by North Korean actions. We believe that the United States is legitimate in that it can legally carry out these actions. We believe that the United States' legitimacy to use force extends into cyberspace and not just the conventional sector. We believe that this would be a last resort. We would exhaust all international and diplomatic channels, such as the UN, before we undertook this. We believe that we have a reasonable chance of success. These actions would not be futile. And we believe that in everything we would declare our intentions and declare that we were in a state of war if these courses of actions were taken out. I will now pass this on to Cadet Schaefer to brief us on the legal aspects of our case.
Today I'll be addressing the laws that we have considered in planning our courses of action in response against any conventional, hybrid, or purely cyber attack from North Korea. We'd like to operate under the precedents set by the law of countermeasures. This enables a country the right to respond in any situation in which that country was initially attacked first. We also need to set up a definition to go out and legally justify all our courses of action. We'd like to adopt the definition of a cyber attack as any action seeking to undermine the functions of a cyber network for political or national security purposes. By operating under this definition, it allows us to use the precedents set by the law of countermeasures, as well as the ethical implications set by just war theory. While operating in an international conflict, we assume that the United States will carry out its right to self-defense and act in accordance with international and humanitarian law, as well as the legal framework already existing. International organizations that we will cite and treaties that we will cite as well are the International Committee of the Red Cross, International Court of Justice, as well as the United Nations. The treaties that we referenced in planning our courses of actions are the Toledo Manual 2.0, the Geneva Convention Articles, as well as the United Nations Charter. The Toledo Manual 2.0 is a recent document that came out in 2017 that lays out the legal framework regarding the country's rights and obligations in delegating in the cyber world. This document has not been accepted by any country so far and is still being heavily debated, but in the future it could become law and everybody will have to implement it when they're conducting international operations. We also, to stay in with the ethical implications set by these organizations, we have to operate under a strict rules of engagement. This would require us to identify the United States' actions in any response we take, as well as we will not attack any civilian infrastructure that affect food or water supplies of non-combatants. By staying within these considerations, we uphold the ethical standards set by the legal organizations that we reference. We also planned our course of actions to uphold the ethical principles taken by the oaths taken by our military officers as well as our enlisted personnel. That way, in any course of action that we prescribe, and if they have to implement it, there is no moral or ethical conflict between our military service members and our plans, courses of action, and they can carry our course of actions in international conflict without any hesitation. I will now pass it on to Cadet Rubel as he will discuss our first course of action.
So in the event of a cyber attack against the United States by North Korea, our recommendation is to conduct offensive cyber operations, destroying the enemy's access to the cyber realm by destroying their presence on the physical layer. What this entails is that we would destroy their routers, modems, computer systems by overloading their systems until they are overheated, so they're no longer useful. The tactical consideration for this is that they would no longer be able to carry out attacks of the kind which triggered our response. Strategic considerations, nations like Russia, China, Japan, South Korea, there could be some spillover due to the nature of the internet. Our way of mitigating this is to open communications with these nations to tell them that the spillover is not our intent, we mean them no harm. Specifically, countries like China and Russia, to tell them through open communication as well as the United Nations and other standing treaty organizations that we're not interested in war with them. We are only seeking to restore the sovereignty which was taken from us or damaged when North Korea attacked us via the cyber realm, as that is, as previously stated, an affront to our sovereignty. Ethical considerations, we would utilize distinction, meaning that we would only target military targets, and due to the nature of North Korea, a lot of their systems are dual use, meaning that civilians and military targets could both be affected. However, we would make the utmost effort to only target military installations such as the routers and systems which were used to target us in the first place. And then finally, ethical considerations would be, that was an ethical consideration. Legally, we would consider that the law of countermeasures, again, previously stated that the United States, as we were attacked first, as our sovereignty was attacked, we have the right to respond in kind with cyber attacks. Proportionally, they attacked us with cyber, so we would respond in turn with the cyber attack. And with this, I'll pass it off to Cadet Schaefer, who will discuss conventional attacks.
In the case of a purely conventional attack from North Korea, we suggest that the United States responds by conducting denial of service attacks against North Korean communication systems within their government as well as their military framework. Denial of service attacks, or DDoS attacks, could consist of disrupting or degrading their communication as well as their cyber networks. So if they have a communication system that they have where they're talking to their forces out in the field, or if they're trying to communicate over a cyber network, we look to harm those intentions in support of our operations in the land, air, and sea. Our strategic considerations with this form of response, we have to look at any spillover to surrounding nations such as Russia, China, Japan, or South Korea. Cyber networks are all interconnected, and if we affect one, especially North Korea, we could potentially harm others. And with that, we need to have open channels of diplomatic relations with those nations, making sure that they know that they were not the intended target for this type of response. Another strategic consideration that we looked at is that if we would operate and conduct this type of offensive operation, we'd be displaying our capabilities in the world view. That means our enemies and our allies would know our capabilities regarding our offensive cyber attacks, and that could potentially become harmful for future conflicts down the road because they could war plan against us if they know what we can do. We would lose the element of surprise and secrecy by doing this type of attack, but that's something that we have to consider by going forward. Ethically, we're justified because we seek to respond with the best of intentions. As previously stated, we were attacked first and we're just responding proportionally to this, as well as we are seeking to end the conflict as fast as possible to restore peace to the Korean Peninsula as quickly as possible. We also will not attack any civilian infrastructure that would directly harm their food or water supplies. We're legally justified by Article 51 of the United Nations Charter because that gives us the right to respond and act in accordance as long as we're acting in accordance with international humanitarian law as well as the other organizations that we cited earlier. I will now pass it on to Abrubal as he will talk about our third course of action.
All right, so the third course of action is a hybrid cyber and conventional attack from North Korea. So we're assuming, again, with this, that the United States would respond in kind by cutting off the initial cyber attack and following up with a conventional counterattack. And so with that, we decided that tactically it would be better, instead of destroying their network presence on the physical plane, it would be better to instead deny and degrade their access so that we could still use their network to do things such as reconnaissance, some deception, do some manipulation of their communications, so that we could support the conventional measures that are going on from the U.S. at that time. So we would do things, we would deny and disrupt their command center nodes so that they cannot effectively disseminate information. We would do things similar to what Britain has done, and they just announced that they have done in the Middle East against ISIS. That would be denying access so that, specifically so that ISIS cannot put out as much of their propaganda as they had in the past. Britain has recently claimed that they were behind doing that. So, strategic considerations, again, we're dealing with China and Russia as somewhat allies with North Korea, so we're going to again be letting them know that any attack that spills over in the cyber realm would not be meant for them. Additionally, South Korea as an ally would obviously keep them abreast of everything we were doing, working closely with them. And a big strategic consideration would be working with other allies, such as Great Britain, that have cyber capabilities, working with them to elicit their help, as they've helped us, as recently as a few days ago in Syria in a conventional way. Ethically and legally, much the same as the other two courses of action, we're still operating, in self-defense. We're still good under United Nations Article 51. We're still acting in proportion and with distinction. So we're still good all through there. With that, I will pass it off to Cadet Thomas for the conclusion. Thank you.
In conclusion, we believe that it is imperative that any act of aggression by North Korea be met with a significant response in order to preserve U.S. sovereignty. In these courses of actions, we have presented a cyber component of this. It is obviously not the entire strategy, but we believe that these present a concrete set of guidelines that field commanders could use in their cyber response to a purely cyber, purely conventional, or hybrid attack by North Korea. Furthermore, we believe that these actions that we have proposed are ethical. They satisfy both jus ad bellum and jus in bello considerations like proportionality and distinction, that they are legal under international law, and that they are both tactically and strategically feasible and effective in bringing an end to a conflict with North Korea in a way that is both just and quick. Thank you very much.
All right, excellent job, gentlemen. We now open the round to questions from the judges. Please be cognizant of the fact that we have a limited amount of time. We have 15 minutes, and we want to try and get as many questions in as we can. Therefore, if it seems to me like you're taking too much time answering a single question, I reserve the right to come in and ask you to stop it there, and then we'll move on to the next one. I haven't had to do that once. Just let me know.
There are cyber teams operating in other nations and around the world. What's their combatant status, and are we ethically and legally able to clandestinely eliminate them?
So,
in the scenario, they said that the North Koreans had teams that were operating outside their country.
sir.
And I'm asking, are they cyber warriors? Are they guerrillas? Are they non-combatants executing combatant operations? What's their status? And can I hire the CIA to go in and kill them? Or can we use other measures to kill them and eliminate them as a cell?
So, sir, I believe, and we took this into consideration, obviously there are a whole host of tactical and strategic implications to attacking facilities in other countries. However, we believe that they would be under combatant status and that we would be justified in taking cyber actions against them, much as we are justified in taking actions against, say, terrorist elements operating across the Afghan border in Pakistan. But in all of these, we would have to weigh the pros and cons of attacking, say, a facility in China very heavily and keep the strategic implications of that, the implications of possible spillover in mind. But if we could be reasonably certain of a chance of success and it would not lead to widespread strategic trouble, then we believe we would be justified in this.
All right, thank you very much.
Are you advocating preemptive action against North Korea based on some level of intelligence that they're about to do something? Or are you advocating, well, let's wait and see what happens and then we'll respond accordingly?
So, sir, under just war theory, the question of a preemptive strike is a very divisive one. In our scenarios, we have mainly considered in response to an existing strike by North Korea against us, because that's a rather unambiguous option. However, under just war theory, there is this school of thought that states that if there is solid and overwhelming evidence that a strike is imminent, say that North Korea is preparing to attack the Washington, D.C. power grid or the New York Stock Exchange, we believe that if we had solid and overwhelming intelligence based on that, we would be justified in launching any of these courses of action.
Okay, because under current just war theory, it's a gray area as to whether cyber warfare is even considered aggression or not, and you've defined it as aggression.
Yes, sir.
Right? So, do you think that the international community then should, probably never happen, but should redefine what just war is to include cyber warfare so that there's no ambiguity there?
Sir, I believe under the definition of aggression that we provided, which is backed by just war theorists like Michael Walzer and Michael Beard, that aggression, broadly defined, includes cyber warfare actions that attack our sovereignty, but I do believe there definitely is more room for a more wider adoption of that definition, and I think there will be an increasing recognition that cyber warfare is warfare universally.
Okay, thank you.
Can I add on to that, sir? If you don't mind. The Talib Manual 2.0 that I mentioned before is a document where they're kind of trying to decipher the exact stuff that you're talking about right now, so that's why we put it in our legal consideration.
Right, but that hasn't really been adopted by anybody.
No, sir, it's not by it.
Did you consider any defensive type measures that should be taken in a situation presided in the case of this imminent threat? In other words, is there a deterrent or an applet that we could build that would discourage them?
Well, so
You mean you're looking for peacetime? I mean, any approach to this, you're looking to prevent wars or have peace and restore some kind of peace after an action. But what did you look at defensively, given the case, as a matter of deterrence, diplomacy, what have you?
So let me make sure I understand your question. So you're asking about actions we might take.
Well, what you've decided is you're going to be prepared, but you're going to wait for an attack, and then you're going to carry out these measures, which I think were ethical and followed, the ad bellum and the end bellum. I'm just saying, what do you do in a preventive or defensive measure? What would you suggest? Are we just sitting and waiting?
No, sir. Our cyber networks right now, we're looking to always upgrade them and protect those. We have, we're sending people to colleges and learn, more about the cyber networks to build security systems with that. And then we have basically like trap holes in place that if anybody would try to attack one of our systems, we could catch them and then we could understand what they're doing to us and then attack them immediately back, or shut off their ability to attack us immediately without, really extending our things. So in the defensive term, we're continually building and upgrading our systems, cyber grids, or as well as the Pentagon's computer system. We're continually building and trying to I believe they're called Trojan walls, and just there's multiple layers of security and cyber networks that go into that, and we're constantly adding on to that building and testing it ourselves. And we have teams that go in and try to hack our Pentagon systems, for example, and then so if they can, then we fix those holes immediately, and if they can't, they just keep on trying to attack until they succeed. So those are kind of defensive operations that we could take and are taking right now to make sure that we're not attacked, or if we are attacked, we can respond.
I was going to ask, the 2016 election cycle, right, was still debated how much there was intrusions and DNCs, emails, and Facebook intrusions, et cetera, et cetera. Under your framework, is that cyber warfare?
We believe that that sort of ongoing interference is troubling, but it does not represent an attack on critical infrastructure. That is, it's akin to, say, North Korea's recent hack of Sony, I believe in 2015, where they stole copyrighted material and distributed. It's troubling, and it's definitely possibly a criminal matter, but because it does not involve widespread damage to our critical infrastructure, sort of acute damage, it really represents an ongoing pattern of criminal activity or cyber malfeasance rather than warfare.
How do you define sovereignty? You spoke a lot about sovereignty being approached in cyberspace. Is there a workable definition? Is it just within, out to the 3-mile limit, or another concept that would look like?
Of just the definition of sovereignty.
Well, so, yeah, in cyberspace, though. If you go after a U.S. company that's in Brussels, but it's a U.S. company that's making money for the United States, is that an infringement of sovereignty?
Sir, I believe that, again, our definition of sovereignty really rests on attacks against things critical to the United States, while a breach against U.S. companies might be a minor breach of sovereignty in that they're attacking U.S. assets. It would not really be covered under our framework of
So something
cyber.
that got in the United States that was damaged. That's how we should use it.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thanks.
Gentlemen, we have time about 5 more minutes if anyone would like to ask a follow-up or second question. Okay. BMI, thank you very much. Excellent job.